All right, so this is Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes? I'm Josh,
That's Wes.
and this week we're back with another Gary Stewart album. We are covering Cactus and a Rose.
Yes, and we've made it to the 1980s.
Barely. And I know you
Yeah,
keep wanting to get rid of RCA. Well, we didn't get rid of RCA, but we don't have Roy Day producing this one.
yeah, I finally got my facts straight here, and I know where we're at. I know there's still more RCA to come, as a matter of fact, but this is it. The last one we're going to talk about anyway.
Yeah, and this one was recorded by Chips Moman, and like you said, it was released in 1980. And Chips Moman, he wrote a lot of songs like Dark End of the Street, Do Right Woman, Do Right Man. He produced some Elvis albums. He was in Memphis there for a while in Stax, and then in the mid '70s he moved to Nashville, and he actually helped with Lukenbach, Texas, that Waylon song.
Oh, a little bit of outlaw then, eh?
Yeah, he had started working on a lot of RCA stuff as well. But this was actually Jerry Bradley's idea for a moment to produce Cactus and a Rose.
Now, did Chips and Gary get affiliated at all because of Chips working with Stax Records stuff?
No, it was because Jerry Bradley.
Okay. Nah, I forget too. So we've been using Jimmy McDonough's book, I Am from the Honky Tonks, and he talks a bit about this too, right?
Yeah, he said Moman told Ed Hurt that Gary was real strange. They didn't quite get along. Moman described being in the studio trying to capture a vocal that was sounding muffled. I couldn't figure out what it was. I went back there and he was laying down on the floor, and that's the way he was. That explains everything. He was just a funny guy. That was what he said.
Talking about Gary.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Well,
it also says in the book, according to Sonny Tackett, early on, Chips made a statement that put a sour note on the whole sessions. He said, "This ain't going to be another Roy Day session," and Gary happened to overhear it. Chips and Gary never got along.
hmm. That's interesting because I don't know. We'll talk out track by track, but I I I think they put together a pretty good record overall.
Yeah, we'll keep talking about it. I mean, it actually has quite a bit in the book. It says in the book it was a lot different from the sessions for all my other albums. Stewart told Bob Allen. This was not a Music City 3 hours, 3 track situation. The fact Chips owned the studio meant there was no clock. A session booked for 6 might start at 8. Maybe they went out to eat instead or just sat around and talked, said Gary. Moman called the shots. We'd lay around, and when the feeling would come to him, he'd turn on the tapes and start rolling. Sometimes it'd go 2 days. It was real relaxed. I get to where I'd have passed out on the couch. It took a long time to do the album, 9 months, like having a baby. And so we were wondering if, because, we read this book a few months ago, and as we talked in that last episode, we stumbled upon the interview Gary did with Bob Allen where he talks quite a bit about this. And I'll update the Substack and link that. And it's really interesting to hear his perspective from him,
Yeah,
his own voice.
yeah. As soon as you started saying that and said Bob Allen, I was like, well, that's got to be that interview we listened to. It's the same name, so yeah, there's that connection. It's a great interview. One of the longest that I know of, where you can actually hear Gary just sort of talk and get his perspective, and you can really get a sense of his personality in that. I mean, he's really cutting up and being funny, and it's really a joy.
Yeah, and he's really stoned. But
Sure, yeah, I think he's got the Okeechobee purple going.
I'd actually put it in my notes about the baby quote there because I thought that was pretty interesting quote from Gary. So it's funny Jimmy included in the book, and I knew you could relate to that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, very much so right now. Although I guess once you get an album out in the world, it's a little different than when you got a little one who's arrived.
Yeah, you didn't birth Cactus in a Rose.
No, no, I sure didn't.
Or I guess you didn't birth anything, but that's a that's a different story. But yeah, it definitely talks a lot about the album in here, surprisingly, more than Gary in my the album. Gary has more information, and it says actually in the book, halfway through the sessions, Day was still at RCA using keyboard player Bobby Emmons for a studio session. Bobby Emmons, he's Chip's right hand man, noted Day, who said Emmons took him aside and told him, "Hey, Chips, sends you a message. He said to tell you you're a genius for ever getting anything out of Gary in the first place. And you're a bigger genius for getting out when you did. Chips didn't get anything out of Gary, and it shows on that record. He couldn't figure out how we cut any records. Gary was running wild with him like he did with me," which I found it interesting. That's Chip's perspective here.
Hmm. Well, I guess he had a right to say that. I mean, yeah, the direction on this one's different. I'll say that. I don't have this is one of those that again is not on streaming. You have the vinyl copy. Josh, I was trying to buy it ahead of us talking about this, and it's not through the roof or anything, but it's not an inexpensive one to pick up either.
I don't even remember where I got it. I got it behind me, but
But yeah, what's the recording crew look like on this one? Who's credited?
so it started around 1979, and the Nashville Press reported Gary was still in the studio in February 1980, and it was apparently the most expensive Stewart record ever made. In the book, it says, "I never seen any figures, but I'll kiss your ass if Chips Moman has ever done an album for 36,000," said Roy Day. And yeah, well, as we said, it was cut in Moman's studio there in Nashville, and it had again Reggie Young on guitar, Pig Robbins on keys, Jerry Kerrigan. Also had Bobby Emmons on it. There's a few other people on here too. There's Eddie Anderson, Fred Newell, Gary Scruggs, Gregg Allman, Hayward Bishop, Jeff West, Johnny Christopher, Mark Morris, Mike Lawler, Merle Counts, Shane Keister, Sonny Garish, and Tom Cogbill are also on here. Not quite sure what they were all playing, but
Pretty different crew.
yeah, and we also have Bonnie Bramlett, from Allman Brothers, kind of circle singing on it, and Sherry Kramer and Lisa Silver and Tony Wine also all sing on it.
Yeah, and this album overall, uh, did it didn't sp did it spawn any big hits? Not really, right?
Um, no, the single was Roaring and Are We Dreaming the Same Dream was, I think, the only 45 that came out of this album. I forgot to
Yeah.
mention also Dickey Betts is on this.
Oh, well, not a bad guy there.
No, and this is the time where Gary started hanging out with the Allman Brothers a lot. And, if you listen to that interview, and it gives quite a bit of information in the book as well about his time during then, it's really interesting and a good perspective. There's one story about Dickey inviting Gary to his hotel room for saying he needed help or something, and Gary showed up with a cowboy hat, silk shirt on, and his cowboy boots, and that's all he had on.
Well, yeah, hopefully he was able to help him out. Yeah, I know he talks in that interview that we mentioned about, he said the Allman Brothers would go and play these big shows, and then afterwards, somebody like Dickey would then stay up like all night long writing songs, and that's where they did their songwriting really. And it's kind of fascinating in that sense that Gary seems so influenced by them, and as Jimmy tells it in his book, they sort of had this like chance encounter in the airport, and then they became pals. And even when I went to that Country Music Hall of Fame event, which was fantastic, and when Gary's daughter Shannon was talking about that, I think it was amazing what she said that she was growing up, and the members of the Allman Brothers would just like come to their house and be hanging out, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, it talks about that. And it actually has a quote in here from our buddy Boogie Bob. And it says he remember sitting in a hotel with Gary and Dickey Betts and making jamming acoustic guitars all night until the sun came up. There was a lot of George Dickel, marching powder, and everything else.
Oh Lord, man, you ever had George Dickel?
I don't think so.
Oh
That
man,
sounds like
that's
an interesting night.
yeah, it would be. No, I mean George Dickel's okay. It's kind of like it's also Tennessee whiskey. You can sort of like not Jack Daniels, but if you're gonna buy one, it's like one or the other, you know.
Yeah, I don't want to stay away from anything from Tennessee, buddy.
Yeah, well, I'll get you a bottle of really old George Dickel that tastes like you're biting into some wood, and you can re-experience that night.
Oh man, I don't know if I want to experience that night besides listening to them sing, which speaking of, I'll have to track it down again. There is a pretty nondescript recording on YouTube that exists of the almonds with Gary that Gary's not even mentioned in, where there might have been a news segment where they're sitting around just playing songs, and Gary and Gregg and I think Dickey and maybe someone else are just singing Amazing Grace, and it's quite insane.
Yeah, you sent that to me a while back. We'll track it down and post it. That's a cool one.
Oh yeah. Which goes to speak about, Gary played with them a lot, but he wanted to go on the road with them, but he was recording this, which kind of kept him from doing so. And, they appear here, but this album definitely doesn't have that kind of feel at all. It doesn't have the feel of the jam sessions or anything. And it is a more pop centered album for Gary, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say so. Probably the poppiest one yet. Uh, there's some tracks that lean country for sure, and like many, there's at least, a legendary one here or there. So I don't know. Should we get into it?
Yeah, it takes us to track one, which is Okeechobee Purple. And this was written by Bobby Emmons and Chips Moman. And the intro sounds like it could have been from an 80s theme. I kind of thought like a TV theme. And it's not about the actual Okeechobee purple that Gary is known to have. And he was shy about talking about on the Bob Allen interview. He didn't want to say what it was about. But one of the other guys chimes in and says, "Yeah, we smoked some of that, Gary." And I don't know why the song's named that, especially if Chips didn't love Gary and it's nothing about that or how it got the name. But yeah, what did you think about the song?
Well, you can tell the production's different, really right off the bat. And I don't think that's just because we're in 1980. I mean, it just doesn't sound like the records we were listening to before. And yeah, you're right. It does sound kind of like a weird little 80s theme, and uh, it's poppy. And yeah, I mean, like you said, Gary gets a good laugh about the song being named what it is, but I don't know if he just maybe they liked the way that sounded, or maybe it was an inside joke. We may never know. But yeah, overall, I think it's like a bit of an odd opener, but I don't think it's a bad strong by any stretch. And the background vocals are kind of like gospel-like, which I actually sort of appreciated.
Yeah, the theme lyrically is a little odd for Gary, but song's grown on me. It's not bad. I think I kind of like it because it's different. It's just something we've not heard Gary do, which I'm sure if you're wanting the honky tonk and drinking songs, you're gonna be disappointed by this album. But me personally, as we'll venture through this song by song, I kind of like the shift, but we'll see.
I think we're gonna probably agree on that. And frankly, I think there's a lot of people who hit the 80s, and people who had hit records in the 70s and such, and they just fall off pretty hard. And this is really not in that category. So that's great for Gary.
Yeah, and I mean this album came out in '80, and we had the Brotherly Love that came out in 82. And then I think his first high tone album was maybe 88. So he didn't put out a lot in the 80s, which I'm curious if you haven't seen it. Mark Lynn with Delmore Recordings is putting out an awesome Gary compilation of some of his early songs that you should go pre-order over on Bandcamp. And he's apparently doing a third volume of the 80s, and there's going to be one in the 70s too. So I'm curious what else exists out there of Gary from the 80s. I know Jimmy talks about some demos of some of these songs, but that'd be pretty interesting. But anyways, that takes us to track two, which is Cactus in a Rose, written again by Bobby Emmons and Chips Moman. And two songs in, and Gary's in New York in both of them. A little odd lyrically, but I love this song. And it reminds me of the story in Jimmy's book where it doesn't really mention much about Gary ever being in New York except the time he was in that elevator and had all the people from New York. I think it was like a executive elevator or something. He just says out of nowhere, "I wonder how much fucking corn this building would hold."
Oh man, those guys probably didn't know what to say. Oh. Especially you can think of his voice too, saying that, you know.
Yeah. Oh
Oh
man.
man. Yeah, Gary's in New York. He's not in Acapulco or Mexico or anything. He's just hanging out in New York. He's drinking his beer because I still like to drink my beer. Still love a honky tonk. Where the good old girls always dance with you and the highfalutin women won't. I got to respect any song that works in highfalutin.
Yeah, I mean Chips Moman was a brilliant songwriter. There's no discrediting that at all. And that this song to me I love. I think this is a great song and I've listened to it over and over and over again to be honest. I But yeah, I mean this kind of feels like an anthem to me, with those lyrics you just read, kind of like Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah, I think so. And it feels genuine, Gary singing it. Um, I don't know if you felt this way. I mean, I also feel like this is little bit gospel tinged with the backing vocals. I don't know if that was intentional all the way through, but I kind of get the sense that's what they were going for.
I think because of Bobby Emmons, this album is pretty keyboard heavy for Gary, which is interesting because it does make a note where Gary was like a little confused. I don't know if confused is the right word, but he kind of wasn't sure how to take it on the road because he didn't have a keyboard player, which is interesting because Gary was an awesome one, but I think he just preferred playing guitar. So I think that was a little shift for Gary.
Yeah, I wonder if he did a lot of these songs live. I mean, I feel like this one would have been pretty good if they, arranged it somehow for
Cactus
a
in a
live show.
Rose is a live performance online. That's amazing. It's just Gary and a guy playing keyboards.
Oh, you've sent me that one, right?
Yeah, it's immaculate. But it's from like the late 90s. I have not found a live version of I don't think there is anymore, but may be one of Are We Dreaming the Same Dream that I've seen. Other than that, I've never seen any other live versions from any of these songs.
Interesting.
Besides one that we'll talk about.
Yes, one notable exception.
But anyways, that takes us to track three, which is Staring Each Other Down. And this is again written by Bobby Emmons and Chips Moman. I thought, sort of a slow bow. This brings us back more into the country feel. This song's grown on me a little bit. It's not remarkable, but not bad in any way.
Uh, no, it's a decent ballad song. I mean, it's not tempo is maybe a little bit of a drag, and overall, there's not really been any like boot stomping songs so far. But I'm not sure that's what this is going for either. I think it's been pretty deliberate in the sound that it's trying to make so far. Um, and yeah, I don't. It doesn't feel out of place. I don't really know that I have a whole lot to say about this song.
I know Chip's wife at the time sang a lot of background vocals on this. I think she's on this one possibly, which she was okay, but not the best. But yeah, this isn't a bad song. It's not skippable for me. I'll listen to it, but it's definitely not like a top Gary song in any way, but it does take us back into the country feel.
That's true. And then I think it gears us up for what's coming next too.
On track 4, we got Lover's Knot, which is written by Richard Supa. And I found there wasn't a lot of info on him, but he was kind of part of Aerosmith, which was interesting. I will say, I'm going to get on a little bit of a soapbox here. I really appreciate that Jimmy wrote this book, and I think he admits that he's kind of aggressive at times. I think some of his opinions on stuff are kind of nonsense sometimes as well. Like he said Anne Murray's version is better than this of Gary, which just speaking those words seems just idiotic if I'm going to be honest. I'm sorry, but that's one of the dumbest takes I've ever heard. And I would think someone that's a critical writer would have a better one. I don't want to bad mouth Jimmy. I just think that's stupid. But, I'm really thankful he's kept Gary's legacy alive here. But some of the stuff in here, I have a hard time understanding how he loved Gary's music so much and what his expectation out of some of it was. Because this song is amazing. Saying Anne Murray is better. I mean, come on. Like, okay. Yeah, it's just plain nonsense. And some of his reviews really confuse me. I don't quite understand what he's looking for here.
Let me get a little taste of this Anne Murray version real quick.
You can get a taste of the Anne Murray version, but I think the just speaking that is enough to tell you. I mean, if I don't think Anne Murray has a country song better than anyone, but no knock to Anne Murray. But yeah, I mean,
Doesn't sound very remarkable. I'll give you that. I don't know. Does this go back to what we were talking about before, where we know Jimmy heard all these unreleased tracks that are probably legendary and incredible, and maybe all of it's sort of still colored by that?
no, I I'm not going to read it all in the book, but I will say this is an album that he gave Gary a really hard time about, that to the point that when I was reading it kind of made me a little, wouldn't say uncomfortable, but it was just kind of like, why did he press him that way? You needed to give it a rest. Like, I don't think you push artists that way of like saying something sucks and they could have done better, because whose place is he to say that, Especially straight
Yeah.
to the guy's face. And I know that's been a little bit of the criticism of him, and especially with Nil too. And I don't understand why. You can read it for yourself. Yeah, it wasn't super nice, and I think he's totally off about this album. We'll keep talking about it, but he likes what he likes. I think he's wrong, but I don't know. I think this song's awesome. It feels a little more 80s, but one of the more underrated Gary songs. And you know, here we are tangled up again in a lover's knot. Not tangled up in blue, but we're still tangled up. And you got Gregg Allman singing background vocals on here too.
Yeah. Um, I really like it actually. I think it's like feels like unfiltered Gary the way he's singing. In general on the album, I it's a change up and it's a little kind of off the rails sometimes, but in a way that I truly enjoy. And it sounds like Gary, you know. I mean, I think he's just sort of letting it go, and I actually like that. Maybe the guitar on this is a little too like cheesy 80s sounding for me, but I like the song quite a bit. And Gregg Allman's, like you said, his backing vocals with again, it's sort of like gospel Motown-y sound, like sound pretty awesome. And I don't know that I would call this a country song necessarily, truth be told, but I think it's pretty good for what I would call essentially like a pop number by Gary.
Yeah, this album is kind of pop, and I love Greg's background vocals with Gary, and you can tell they had like sung together before. And I think Jimmy's criticism a little bit is that it's not country, but if you listen to that interview, Gary says he doesn't like necessarily want to play country. I
Yeah.
don't think Gary was like, su- I I wouldn't say he got pigeonholed into it. I know he loved country, but I don't think that would have been what he was necessarily playing all the time. He
No, it
said he
doesn't
wanted
seem
to
like
play
it.
the blues.
Blues or rock and roll. Yeah, I mean, one of his favorite bands was the Allman Brothers. Like the Allman Brothers, Southern rock, and but they're not what all country either, you know. So
No, I don't really think that's what Gary was. Well, he just got stuck with RCA wanting him to record a drinking songs over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, I do think this album could have done like every album with more Gary Stewart written songs, but we're gonna get some Gary songs, and the ones we get are pretty good.
Yeah, which speaking of Gregg Allman, that takes us to track five, which is Ghost Train, and this was written by Gary Stewart and Gregg Allman. And in the book, it says Ghost Train, the only song I know of credited to Gary Stewart and Gregg Allman, is an ambitious but half baked misfire with unconvincing, self reverential blather about gypsies on the run and a man of the song and a man of the night. That crassly invokes the gone too soon triumvirate of Duane Allman, Hendrix, and Presley. The track itself veering uneasily between chugging rock and space ballad. Stewart seems to want to say something about life on the road, but conveys little more than rock star cliches. Although one couplet jumps out, given Stewart's future. It's a long, hard ride when your ticket's fame. That's a downhill slide on the ghost train. I know of no greater Gary Stewart fan than Sonny Tackett, who describes the performance this way. Gary was doing everything in his power to impress Gregg and Dickey. He was a little stoned on that session, and you can hear it on Ghost Train. And what you hear is Gary almost trying to emulate Gregg, going just a bit too far. I think Gary's voice is a little odd on that, which you can kind of hear him trying to sing like Gregg, maybe some, but it kind of sounds like it could have been on to their song. But I do like this song, and there's a couple parts where it feels like a guitar solo is going to kick in, and could have been great jams on here, but maybe Chips didn't want that and it was held back. So I do see that it could have been a better song. So it was a little bit of a missed opportunity, but I still like the song a lot. It's definitely very different.
Yeah, I remember again going back to that Country Music Hall of Fame event when Shannon was talking. She mentioned some songs. She said, there's some of these songs that are just a little more obscure, and she actually, I think, more than once mentioned Ghost Train as a song that she really appreciates. And I really enjoyed, or I kind of implied I think Gary liked it too, probably because he was playing with the Allman Brothers. They were his heroes, and um, I the keyboard in the middle is pretty interesting for the Gary track you mentioned. It's kind of there's a lot more keyboard in general on this, a lot more keys. Almost feels like an 80s Dead track, it's like a little touch of gray or something. But that's probably that Allman Brothers touch too. And yeah, I mean, my biggest criticism is kind of what you said, that the song never really takes off the way that it seems like it probably could have. But not every song, it's like we talked about this on Gary, like, there's not really like a lot of jam songs in Gary's repertoire on albums, like, some live versions perhaps, but so it's not really out of place in that sense. I will say it works for me. I enjoyed it, but it did make me chuckle a little bit. Towards the end of the song, there is one sort of vocal inflection that Gary does that is it's a bit over the top.
Yeah. I mean, he is singing weird on here a little bit. Doesn't sound as much like him, but I don't really have too many qualms with it. I wish there was a live version or like a longer jam version or something that was different, but good
I think it's
song.
a, yeah, I think it's a little odd to take aim at the way it's written. It doesn't feel half baked to me. I mean, it seems like I don't know. Sometimes I don't see what's so wrong, and maybe this is not, at least to me anyway. It seems like a song they had fun with, and I kind of enjoy that in music. I don't. It does, not every one of these songs has to be so serious.
No, I agree.
So it works for me.
Yeah. So side B, track six, Roarin', which was written by Johnny Cobb and Mike Lawler, and they were part of Ronnie Millsap's band, and I guess this was a song they had all written together and actually recorded. And Gary heard it in the studio and loved it. I can't because Chips Moman was producing it, and so this song is interesting because it's actually all of those guys playing on the song, and Gary just learned the lyrics and sang over their demo track. It is not actually was recorded at all in the studio with Gary.
I wouldn't have guessed that, truth be told, but because it's funny, I actually like the piano a lot on it, and it sort of gives me a Gary flair, like a Gary feel. It's pretty up tempo, as a matter of fact, and I do think maybe we've jumped the shark a little with Gary singing here. It's a little over the top, but because he's kind of like like almost growling by the end. But it's funny. I mean, if it's supposed to be enjoyable, I got a kick out of it. Like I had fun listening to this record, this song in particular.
Yeah, I agree. I think the instrumentation is awesome. It sounds like a party song. Uh just with kind of yeah, like how they're hooting and hollering and it sounds like they're having fun. Unfortunately, Jimmy also did not like this one and said Cobb's vocals are way better than Gary's, and I've not heard his version, but it doesn't sound like Gary singing a lot on this song, if I'm being honest. But I don't know if you took that out of it, it's a great song. If you're like I'm listening for she's acting single Gary, then maybe yeah, you're like okay, what is this? But it's a fun song, and again, why can't you just have some fun every now and then? I like this song.
You got to be roaring.
Oh yeah, I think it's fun. So I don't
Me
care.
too.
I don't need everything to be a masterpiece because we come into track 7, which is Harlan County Highway, and this is written by Dickey Betts in quotes and Gary Stewart. And now we have a masterpiece. I said Dickey Betts in quotes because Dickey Betts said he didn't write anything on this and that Gary would just put people's name on publishing if they were in the room or something, or he got a line from him because he was so nice. Yeah, this is one of Gary's best songs, maybe his best that he wrote. And it could have been written, 100 years ago. Is this the best song about Harlan was?
Um, can I say it's a tie with the Daryl Scott song, You'll Never Leave Harlan Alive?
Yeah, a tie's fine. I say it's better, but
I think it is better. I think it is better. You're right. It
I'm
is.
biased. I forgot to mention though that on Roaring, apparently Don Johnson was gonna cut a version of that, but he didn't end up doing it because of the drug references. But
John
I'm
Johnson,
sorry
Miami
we
Vice.
never got that one. Yeah,
Oh man. Maybe his daughter can do it. She's got the acting chops now. She could sing too.
that is true. But Jimmy says a Kentucky boy quits school, leaving his home, and a mother grieving over a father killed in the mines, gets married, runs moonshine, and drifts into an uncertain fate. Temptation lurks on every corner, 7 corners every mile. His future is all used up. What started off as heaven got lost along the way. There exists a slow Spartan demo of Harlan County Highway, only 3 minutes long, and without the final verse of the released recording. It's perhaps my favorite Gary Stewart recording of all. Nothing fancy, just a local Florida band he took to Nashville for the demo session, with acoustic and electric guitar, bass, and Gary's brother Gerald on drums. But Stewart's vocal will chill your blood. It is permeated with dread, the instinctual knowing an awful fate awaits. As dramatic a recording as Hank Williams' Ramblin' Man, writes musician Del Lawrence, who called the song a hill country soul ballad. The song sounds both 100 years old and like it's writing itself on the spot. The performance is so stark, so still, that whole life seemed to pass between snare shots. Every line is sadder than the last.
Yes, I mean, yeah. What can I think I would have a hard time picking a better Gary song in terms of the writing and the way he sings it. There's the video, and again, I mentioned the Country Music Hall of Fame event because it was just so cool. And I'd seen that public access video of Gary singing it before. And Jimmy mentions it in his book, rightfully so. I think says it's one of the best, and they played that as sort of one of the opening things. Whenever I think they played that in a live Little Junior, but uh, yeah, it's haunting, truly. And Gary's singing it there. I think you get a sense better in that video of sort of what he could command, and he's all alone there. He's just got his acoustic, and you just feel a sense of dread almost hearing this. I ripped out these lyrics that I was thinking about. Way down in Louisville, where the ponies run, where a man can turn $1 into 100 on a hunch. He can buy his dreams or heaven for a smile. Temptation calls from every corner, 7 corners in a mile. Hey, Do you notice Gary always says Louisville? Kind of made me laugh.
No.
Yeah,
Well,
every time, even on that.
while he was at the Kentucky Derby when he was trying to help Dickey Betts at that hotel, but it also says in the book, characteristically, Stewart didn't have much to say about the song. I seen all this being from mining country, kids that grew up without a father, lost them to the mines. I had a second cousin in Louisville. She'd married a guy that played the horses all the time. I just picked up little pieces from here and there, he said with typical humility. Gary told Bob Allen that he wrote it en route to the hospital one day, thinking about his recent trips back to Kentucky. He referenced an old gospel song known to most due to Ralph Stanley's performances of it. Old Baptist is a religion up there, and their singing is haunting. Oh, death. There's a lot of hard times up there, not many opportunities, coal mines, moonshine. Which I think a lot of people probably know Oh, Death from Oh, Brother, We're Out, though.
Yeah, yeah, it's become a more well known since that. I was gonna say, speaking of songs about Harlan, I kind of I kind of think 9 Pound Hammer is a little bit, maybe not explicitly about Harlan, but certainly about that part of Kentucky, the old Merle Travis. Um, I mean, it's a long way to Harlan, it's a long way to Hazard, just to get a little brew.
There's a lot of them randomly. I've never been to Harlan, but I'm always going to
Nah,
choose Gary, so I was just a trick question for me.
well, I'll tell you this about Harlan. I never been there either, but I had some buddies in college who were in the forestry program at University of Kentucky, and they had to go do this program out there. And all I remember, they'd tell me all sorts of stories, and all I remember is there were only 2 bars they could go to, and one was called the Broken Spoke, and the other was called the Fifth Amendment.
Well, my step grandpa that I was grew up with pretty close. He was from around there, and he would tell me some wild stories. And I mean, he was born in 1913, so he was telling me about the first time he saw ice cream and the first time he saw a car, and yeah, and there were some rough stories. So I think uh, I think Harlan never outlived its reputation, but
No, and this is really, I mean, I would think Gary's experience with it, he would have heard stories probably from his parents, or his dad, and I mean, it's a hard part of the country. I know they weren't from Harlan, but they're from that general area.
yeah, I don't know exactly how close Letcher County is to Harlan, but I don't think it's very far away. I think it's like right below Pikeville, so it's pretty close to Harlan. It's all out there in eastern Kentucky, not too far away from where my mom grew up in West Virginia, but yeah, this song's is really special. It's yeah, in that interview too, Gary talks, he's pretty open about anytime he kind of got depressed or down, he would go back to Kentucky and find a place to stay because it gave him peace. Even though he loved Florida and everywhere else, it's kind of like me and you get away, but there's just something, it doesn't leave you. It's your home.
Well, we're a couple of colonels over here, so we know a little bit about that. But yeah, I looked it up, by the way. Harlan and Jenkins are about an hour apart. Jenkins is about an hour northeast or so it's even further east than Harlan somehow.
Okay.
Um, I guess Jenkins is about as far east as you can go almost then.
Yeah, it's pretty far out there. So
Yeah, I mean, not everybody, I guess, knows Kentucky as much, but I mean, what Kentucky's it's a long state east to west, and the western part of the state and the eastern part of the state really couldn't be more different. I'm from central Kentucky, and you're from east, but you're kind of like where the East Kentucky begins, more or less, right?
you think Madisonville's central? I'd call it western.
They used to call it central, but it could be one or the other. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's near Western Kentucky University, so I suppose it's more western.
Yeah, I would assume Lexington's more is usually considered Central Kentucky. Because,
That makes
but
sense.
anyways, we don't need to talk anymore.
Harlan's an interesting place, is suffice to say, and I think Gary, I'm gonna agree with you. It's the best song about Harlan ever made, and I do think it's just haunting. I could listen to this song over and over and over again, and it never really gets old.
There's a great Jim Ford song called Harlan County, and obviously the Harlan County documentary, Harlan County, USA, if you've never seen that, is probably the best documentary ever made. So that's worth watching. But, anyways, that takes us into track 8, Are We Dreaming the Same Dream? And written by Billy Burnett and Johnny Christopher. I love this song, but Jimmy says in the book, a pop rocker being produced by Moman at the same time as Gary, who fell for the number and talked Moman into cutting it. Unfortunately, the cloying production overwhelms the track. It's slightly 80s, but the first time I heard the song, it made me cry, if I'm being honest. I don't know, maybe it was just the subject matter, but I uh, I love this song. It's got a little more of that Motown soul feel that Gary could bring out, even if it is tiny bit 80s sounding. I actually think this is a remarkable song, in my opinion. It's actually become one of my favorites, which may be unpopular opinion, but I really love it.
No, I think that's the joy of Gary. I mean, every time we've talked about one of these albums, there's some songs you and I agree on and that we don't really love, and then it turns out somebody's favorite, and that's kind of a beautiful thing. And Gary's such a unique figure in that sense. And yeah, I don't, it's not one of my favorite Gary songs, but I wouldn't put it amongst those that we've said are like not very good. I don't even think it's like nearing that territory. I I do think the 80s stuff is a little dialed up. I wouldn't say it's light on it, but I just always like a Gary Love song, and I like his voice on it too. I his singing, it seems like it toned down a little bit from some of those sessions where it was getting a little over the top. So I think it works here.
Yeah, there's a few songs on here that don't sound like Gary as much. Like maybe he was being over the top or trying to sound like Greg, and he's singing like deeper and more like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but this sounds like typical Gary song. His voice, it's pristine on this one.
I know you can't end an album. Well, you could with 8 songs. This would have made better sense to me as the closer than what comes after. I will say that.
Yeah, and Jimmy says in the book, I think most of his frustration that Gary had some demos, the Hollywood demos, some different stuff that you can. He was at the peak of his career right here. He did have the car accident in 1980, which left him on crutches, and he talks about it. Basically, had a lot of surgeries that made it one leg longer than the other, and was a big reason why he had severe pain for the rest of his life, and kind of part of the drug abuse. And he was at his peak here, but I don't think Gary had interest in making something else. I think he wanted to make this album. He wasn't going to make something better with Roy Day. And the only way he would have made something different is if he had a totally different producer, RCA, cut him loose. I mean, I don't, it's easy to say that, but I don't, in the reality, I don't think there was a possibility of that. And this is kind of what, I mean, he had a lot of time to work on this album, and I actually think it's enjoyable. It's just different than anything else. Is it a masterpiece? No. Do I love listening to it? Yeah, quite a bit. But
Yeah. I mean, I think this idea that like even knowing Gary had a lot of songs or demos that were amazing or excellent and just never made the cut, it's like, I mean, oh shit. I mean, just think of Neil Young or somebody like that, who a lot of their 80s output, like I appreciate it and you like it too. And we don't have to go into him in depth or anything, but I just bring him up to say, like, he had a lot of unreleased stuff like that too, but he made what he wanted to make. And that I don't think somebody was sitting there, uh, they weren't like Phil Spectoring him. They weren't sitting in a room with a gun pointed at him, telling him, you got to make Cactus in a Rose. I think it's the album he wanted to make.
oh, for sure, that's exactly what he wanted to make. And maybe he got sidetracked a little, but even when it talked about Roaring, he like begged. Moman to record that song, and some of these are ones he wrote. And so it's easy to say, yeah, he had these better demos, but he also had a better band with Boogie Bob, and they auditioned, and RCA wouldn't let him use them. Like, he was on a label that unfortunately was very controlling, and he wasn't some DIY musician that could go record these however he wanted and just record whatever he wanted. It was the unfortunate part of the music business back there in RCA, in my opinion. I think RCA was kind of outside of Willie and Waylon. I don't know if I would have wanted to record for them because it was all about the money. And so
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, it's hard to have that criticism considering the facts. But anyways, that takes us to track nine. How could we come to this after that? Written by Billy Ray Reynolds and Gary Stewart. I guess Billy Ray Reynolds played with Waylon sometimes, and not a bad song, nothing outstanding. Jimmy mentions a demo that's way different and better, but it doesn't exist in the listening space of anywhere. So this is all I have to hear, and it's fine.
Yes. How could we come to this after that? No, no. I mean, yeah, I agree. I would not really care to seek out this song again. It's not bad. It's just, I mean, this is, Jimmy's ultimate indictment of some of these. It's just kind of boring. It's just not doing it for me, which is crazy. I mean, it's a Gary co-written song, and normally you know, that's a sign of good things to come, but man, it's just sort of, there's just not much going on this song, really.
No, it's fine. I wouldn't skip it necessarily, but I wouldn't put it on. And as you said, the only way to listen to this album is on vinyl. And I think there's maybe a tape release and
There is. I
something,
saw there's actually one for sale out on eBay right now.
some weird CD version that came out at some point, but I don't think it's yeah, it's not an official one, but there's an 8 track as well.
Oh, I used to be able to rock the 8 track.
I know, I would have got it for you. Anyways, you can hear some of these songs on the Central Greatest Hits, and there's a different Greatest Hits too on streaming that has maybe Cactus and a Rose on it. There's a few that you can hear, um, but that takes us to track 10. We made it as lovers, we just couldn't make it as friends. And this is written by Bobby Emmons and Chips Moman. Wes, do we have a Gary Yacht Rock here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that fits the bill. Yeah, pretty much.
Don't you think this is like pretty much a yacht rock song?
Pretty close. I mean, I guess they wanted to that they're like 1980, we're going into a new decade. Let's give them the yacht.
Yeah, I actually I kind of dig it because it's just so different and random. Production wise, different than anything else Gary did. That it's kind of enjoyable because it is like a yacht rock song and it just stands out. I'm glad there's not like albums of Gary Yacht Rock, but for one song, it's a little enjoyable in my opinion. Is it
Yeah.
amazing? No, but I enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, it's a weird bookend, I'll say that. Again, I think to me the last great song on this, not great, but the song that ends it in my mind is Are We Dreaming the Same Dream?
Yeah, I agree. And that is something, Roy Day, we've talked about sequencing great. Chips Moman sequencing on this album, terrible, in my opinion.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
totally random, makes no sense at all. But based on the other stuff he put out, I don't really think he ever thought about sequencing. But
I
yeah, that's,
doubt
as you
it.
said, that's the end of this album. So what do you think, Wes?
Look, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I thought this before, and I've had a lot of time to think about it. I like this one more than Gary, to be
I,
honest with you.
I like it a lot more than Gary, and I listened to it several times again today, just in some of the songs that was not necessarily on the fence about, but like Roaring and a few other ones really hit for me today as well. I actually, for the most part, I don't really think there's a bad song on this album.
No, no, I don't either. And I actually like it's a pretty short record overall. You can kind of listen to it front to back pretty easily. Like one of the bigger dings is I agree the sequencing's kind of weird and but it's actually enjoyable. Like it's a great song if you want to go for like a drive or like it's just a good it's like it's a fun record in a lot of ways. It is odd that Harlan County Highway is on this because I would not classify that song as fun, but
No.
but the rest of them really are. It's kind of just you could kick back and drink a couple of light beers and grill out if you wanted to and listen to this album. I don't know. It works in that sense.
Or sit in your townhouse in New York or ride the boat around the sea. I don't know. You could do a lot of things listening to this album, which is kind of nice. And yeah, there's some more in the book about this album, and I was gonna read it, but kind of more as we talked about. I don't want to be harsh about Jimmy's perspective here, and I really don't want to read his interactions with Gary about the album just because it kind of upset me, to be honest. And I don't have the context as much of how it really was happening in their relationship, but at the end of the day, with everything, it's kind of not helpful to this. And it's funny because he said it was met with a lot of mixed reviews, and one reviewer that really liked it at the time said it was like not country. And Jimmy was like basically saying, well, he said that as if it was a good thing. But I mean, this is a country, probably look country, but um, I don't want the same album every time from Gary. I liked that it was different.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the same way. I don't really take any issue with, somebody I like I don't I've listened to pretty much all the Gary records at this point. I think I have listened to all the commercially released ones. And I don't think we get another one that's quite so poppy as this. So if you wanted a Gary pop record, and I do want that, um, I think this is pretty good.
Yeah, and it kind of has the feel of maybe not for Jimmy, but a lot of albums have come out and not been as well received in the time, but over time they've shifted and people have grown to like them or feel differently about them. And in my opinion, this is one that I think with time it's definitely aged well, and I think it's a very good listen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm glad we actually felt that same way because you and I didn't talk about this. I think we do a pretty good job of that. Of like, we don't really want to influence each other before we, go and get on these episodes and talk about it. And yeah, I was hoping you'd feel the same way. But I take no issues with this album. I'm glad it exists, and I think it fits in the context of like where Gary was in his career. And I don't see it as a step back, frankly. I mean, yeah, it didn't have like a million hits, but that was sort of I don't think Gary was chasing that. The more and more we've talked about these, I just don't think he was chasing it. I think RCA would have liked that for sure. But I don't think that mattered to Gary all that much. Sure didn't seem it anyway.
No, he didn't care. And this album, I think, hit 48. It was in the top 100.
That's nothing to scoff at.
No, sometimes the book makes it seem like that, but I would love to have a top 50 album. But anyways, yeah, I think I had the perception of this album being not good just from like writings and stuff and reading different things, but diving into it because I'd heard it, but a long time ago. I maybe I'd only heard a few songs. It was like surprisingly really good in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I happen to listen to, Gary in this one. I've had Gary on vinyl for a while, so I've heard various tracks and um I don't have this a copy of this one. I'm gonna try to track a copy of it down, but because I'm only missing a couple of Gary ones, but well, I think we're gonna figure out what we're gonna cover, but we're getting pretty close to I guess the end of this Gary series. We'll have a couple more, but yeah, I mean it's I don't want to say goodbye. I'm having such a good time talking about Gary Stewart.
Yeah, we don't have to. We are almost done finally with RCA. I do think this will be the last RCA album we cover because I went back today and listened to Brotherly Love just to be fair to listening to it. I don't think we should cover that one unless you listen to it and change your mind. So
No.
we'll think about that. If not, we'll come back with either I would say we come back with we'll either discuss Brand New, which was or his first high tone record released in '88, or we might just do the best of high tone. We'll decide. Leaning towards doing all of them just because we're having fun, but
Yeah, yeah, we still got a couple. I mean, battlegrounds would be good, and I'm a Texan, right?
which is low key an awesome album. That's why I'm tempted to do all of them because they're kind of underrated as well. And we finally shed RCA, but we bring back Roy Day.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have some fun with it, and I mean, yeah, if there comes a time where we, fellow listeners decide you want to hear us talk about the Gary and Dean Dillon stuff, we can dig back into that. But I'd encourage you to go give it a listen, and you think about whether or not you want to hear two guys talk about that album, that material.
Yeah, and trying to figure out why they ever recorded that one. But anyways, again, thanks for listening. We appreciate it greatly, and yeah, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us if you got any comments or if we randomly mess something up or you have a good perspective or if there's something you want us to cover when we're done with Gary or leave a review if you like it. We're gonna continue to work on updating, and I've been trying to work on putting some of these videos accessible on YouTube just for fair use, that or not from YouTube on our places I find on the Instagram just so people can see them easier that we've talked about because some of this stuff's really compelling and fun to watch, and I'm constantly searching for something else. But I actually found
Yeah.
a Dean Dillon and Gary performance today I'd never seen. But anyways, this is Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes signing off. Adios.
Adios.